Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a world without coffee machines, alarm clocks, or even sunlight, because this story begins long before the first crow of a rooster. Welcome to the world of Renaissance bakers, where your workday starts when everyone else is still dreaming. You'll be on your feet before the city bells ring your hands in flour, before your eyes fully open and your nose full of smoke and sourdough, before you've even formed a complete thought. It's pitch black, not dark like your bedroom with the curtains drawn. No, this is the kind of darkness that eats lantern light whole. You don't rise because you're rested. You rise because that's what your body does now. You've done this every day since you were 12. No one asks you to. No one needs to. Your bones remember. You swing your legs off the straw-stuffed mattress. One toe lands in a cold puddle because of course it rained through the roof again. Your back protests, but there's bread to make. Always bread to make. So you stand. The air in the tiny upstairs room smells of smoke and yeast, two fragrances that never leave your clothes anymore. You pull on your work tunic scratchy with flour crust and step carefully over your snoring apprentice. He's still young, still lucky enough to sleep through mornings. You descend the narrow stairs by memory. Each one creaks in protest. Below the bakery's main chamber waits like a cavern, the scent of yesterday's baking still trapped in the stone walls. You reach for the iron poker cold and greasy and stir the ashes of yesterday's fire. A few faintly glowing embers blink back at you like sleepy eyes. If you've done this right, if the coals were banked well, then the oven will be easy to wake. Sometimes it isn't. You crouch beside the oven mouth. It yawns wide, black, soot-ringed. You whisper to it like always. Maybe it's habit. Maybe superstition. Come on, old girl. Your breath ghosts out before you, and you feel the oven respond, not warm yet, but not empty either. You pile on kindling with care. Too little, and the fire won't take. Too much, and you'll roast the sourdough like a chicken. Flames catch. You sit back on your heels and blink into the glow. It's beautiful in a way. This quiet fire, this ritual you've repeated more times than you've said your own name. Most folks think baking is about flour, or recipes, or good fortune. But no, baking is about timing, and timing starts with this fire. Outside, the world is still black. Even the cats haven't begun to prowl. You can hear the wind against the shutters, a soft moaning like the oven sighing with you. And here's your first reality check of the night. You probably wouldn't survive this job. Really. Not unless you enjoy waking up at midnight and hauling sacks of flour heavier than your dignity across cobblestone streets. But hey, someone has to feed the world before it wakes up. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Bonus points if you're also a night owl. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bakery is warm now. You feed the fire until it roars. Not too hot, though you're not burning witches here. You toss in a pinch of flour, watch it spark and vanish in a blink. Old trick, lets you gauge the oven's temper. Your fingers know this language better than Latin. Crackle, does too hot. Sizzle, just right. Silence, not ready yet. You hum softly. No tune in particular, just the sound of patience. Somewhere in the back rats skitter. You ignore them. They're part of the ambiance now. You slide open the flour chest, careful not to rouse the apprentice yet. The flour's still warm from the miller's sacks delivered late yesterday afternoon. You reach in. It clings to your skin like memory. rougher than modern flour. Not sifted fine like today's pristine powders. There are flecks, bits, personalities. Each batch slightly different depending on the season, the weather, the mood of the donkey who turned the mill. Historians still argue whether the flour back then had more nutritional value or was just more real. Less refined, sure. But maybe that's what gave bread its soul, or its weight, or the sudden urge to nap right after lunch. In a cracked jug beside the fire, water warms slowly. From the well behind the shop, cold enough to sting, but pure. You'll mix it soon, but not yet. First, the most sacred part. You lift the cloth from the small wooden bowl on the windowsill. Inside is a mess. A lumpy, bubbling, twitchy mess. The mother dough, your starter, alive, breathing. It smells like hope and vinegar and something oddly comforting, like a grandmother who's also a little drunk. You stir it gently, feel the bubbles pop. It's ready. And you're still only half awake. But here's something quirky. In some villages, bakers used to name their starter Beatrice, Fat Henry, the Beast. Call it whatever you want, just don't kill it. Lose the starter and you lose the bread. Lose the bread and you lose the town's trust. People notice when their morning loaf tastes different. They complain, loudly, sometimes with pitchforks. So you keep your starter happy. Feed it. Speak softly. No sudden noises. The oven purrs now, the fire content. The dough is whispering to be made. The air smells thick with potential. You rub your palms, stretch your back, and smile despite yourself. It's still dark outside, but your day is already halfway done. The oven is alive now. Not just hot, not merely burning, alive. You feel it in your chest when you lean close, the slow, rhythmic throb of rising heat, pulsing from the heart of the stone beast crouched at the center of your bakery. You whisper again, unconsciously. Everyone does. No one teaches you to speak to ovens, but somewhere between your third blister and fifth burn, the habit takes root. The fire's grown bold, licking the blackened inner walls, casting writhing shadows across the soot-streaked ceiling beams. You crack open the iron mouth with the poker and glance inside. Coals glow deep orange with flecks of white. Perfect. You'd think fire was simple, just light it, feed it, walk away. But no. Ovens like this one, deep-bellied and wood-hungry, require courtship, negotiation. An early Renaissance bakery wasn't just about flour. It was a battleground of heat and will. You feed it in stages. First the kindling, then thin branches. Once those catch heavier logs, you can't just dump it in and hope. You pace it. Watch how the flames climb, how the air shifts. Is the heat curling back too soon? That means the flue needs adjustment. Smoke pooling at the top, either damp wood or poor stacking. Every sign tells a story. You read them like a baker reads everything by feel. Modern kitchens have thermostats, beeping digital panels. You toss a handful of bran into the oven mouth and count how long it takes to blacken. Too fast, too hot. Too slow, you're wasting wood and time. It's like trying to bake with a dragon, temperamental, dangerous, and entirely dependent on your charm. A fun fringe tidbit: some bakers believe the soul of a successful bakery lived inside the oven, passed on through generations like an heirloom ghost. Lose the oven to a fire, and you didn't just rebuild, you held a funeral. You'd carry the ashes to the village edge, scatter them near water, and then return home and start again. You settle on a mix of hornbeam and elm for the fuel today. Hornbeam burns steady. Elm gives that nice, fragrant bite. The logs are still slightly damp, of course, because the woodcutter promised they were dry, and everyone lies about wood. Still, it'll do. You crouch low, poker in hand, gently nudging the embers. The warmth now is different, deeper, settled, ready. It curls around your ankles like a cat. You sip from a cup of yesterday's cider, warm and slightly sour. Nothing starts the day quite like fire and fermented apples. A creak from upstairs. The apprentice stirs. You sigh. It's not that you mind company. It's that company means questions. Master, is the oven ready? Oh no, Beltsies. No. But by the time he's tied his apron properly for the 5th try, it will be. You send him to fetch more water. He trips twice, spills once, and returns smelling faintly of well slime. You give him a rag and point to the table flower time. He sneezes before even opening the sack. You dust the large wooden work table with a practiced sweep. White powder fans out like a tiny blizzard catching in the cracks of the wood. This table has seen things. Generations of fists and fingernails, elbows, and anger. If it could talk, it would probably tell you to stop pressing so hard. The apprentice dumps too much flour. You don't scold. Yet. Instead, you spread it evenly, feeling for clumps. Milling isn't perfect. You still sometimes find husk fragments, a rogue pebble, or worse last week, a beetle with delusions of grandeur. As you portion the flour, you can already hear the oven breathing. It's not literal, of course. Not like a person. But it exhales soft drafts of warmth that tickle your calves and make your eyes sting. You use your arm to wipe your forehead and leave a lovely arc of soot and sweat across your brow. A Renaissance baker's war paint. Water, you say. The apprentice stares. The warm one. From the kettle. Not the slimy bucket. Oh, he's new, and possibly cursed. But he tries. You pour the water slowly, watching the flour darken in swirling streaks. Then with a deep breath and a sigh older than you are, you begin the sacred ritual of mixing. Your fingers dive in first. Spoons are for soup and nobility. You squish, twist, fold. The mother dough joins the party, burbling as she hits the center. It's not a recipe, it's a relationship. You adjust quantities based on humidity, temperature, mood astrology, or just vibes. Historians still argue whether Renaissance bakers used exact proportions or followed handed-down instinct. Written recipes were rare and often vague. One 15th century Italian text famously called for a quantity of water sufficient to make the dough feel like the belly of a contented pig. Try converting that to metric. The fire gives a sudden pop. You glance at the oven. Still steady. Still watching. The apprentice gets bold and pokes the dough. You glare. It's sleeping, you whisper. Oh, sorry. Because yes, this first mixture, this shaggy mess, it needs to rest. It's called autolysis now, but back then it was just let it be for a bit. The flour and water get to know each other. A little mingling before the yeast joins in earnest. You cover it with a cloth and turn back to the oven. A cloud of ash swirls up as you rake the coals into a neat crescent at the back. Later you'll sweep it out. But not yet. For now the oven must bake in its own warmth like a sun-staring lizard. You sit for a moment. First time tonight. Your joints crack in protest. You take another sip of cider, watch the flames dance, and wonder not for the first time why you didn't take up candle making like your cousin. He has all his fingernails and smells like bees. But then again, his shop doesn't smell like this. It doesn't pulse with life. It doesn't bake memories into crust. So you stretch, crack your knuckles, and return to the table. There's bread to become. You lift the cloth from the dough like you're checking on a sleeping child. It's sticky, shaggy, not yet alive. But it started dreaming. Now comes the moment that matters more than fire, more than flour, more than your aching knees. The moment you feed the soul. The sourdough starter, the mother waits nearby, bubbling softly in her wooden bowl like a potion just shy of boiling. You dip your fingers in and it clings stretchy, stringy, still slightly warm from the hearth's edge. It smells assertive, a tang of vinegar apples and yesterday's sweat. The kind of smell that earns your respect, not your affection. You scoop the mother into the dough with a reverence you didn't realize you still had. This lump of fermented flour and water, slimy, sluggish snoring, holds generations inside it. You didn't make her. Not really. You inherited her, nurtured her. Like a cranky elder you don't dare disappoint. You begin to fold, not kneading yet. First coaxing, incorporating. You press the dough down, fold it, overturn. Again and again. The fire crackles in the background like a sleepy applause. Here's something funny. In some parts of southern France, it was once believed that if a woman with unsettled emotions touched the starter, the whole batch would fail. Bakers would actually post signs banning women from entering during dough-making hours. Historians still argue whether this was superstition, misogyny, or just a clever way to blame bad bread on someone else. Probably all three. The apprentice watches you fold. His eyes are wide, his hands twitchy. You let him try. He plunges his fingers in like he's attacking an eel. You wince. The dough screams. Not audibly, of course, but you feel it. Gentler, you say, like you're apologizing. He blinks. To the dough. You nod solemnly. Always. Once the starter is fully introduced, the dough begins to change. It's not just texture, it's temperature. You feel it warming in your hands. The yeast wakes up. Tiny bacteria hold hands and do microscopic jigs. The scent sharpens, deepens. Bread isn't food yet, but it wants to be. You move the dough into a deep oiled bowl, cover it with linen, and set it near the fire. Not too close. Yeast, like people, gets grumpy when overheated. You glance at the oven. Still glowing, still proud. You allow yourself a moment of satisfaction. Now a quirky fact to chew on while the dough rests. Some Renaissance bakers believe that if you said a prayer over the starter, just a short whisper of gratitude, it would rise better. Something about the resonance of the voice or the holiness of intention. Of course, others claim singing would work just as well, especially if the song mentioned saints or wine. You've tried both. Bread listens to neither. But you whisper anyway. You lean back against the wall, exhale, and scan the room. The light is changing. A soft gray seeps through the cracks in the shutters. Morning, still far off, begins to poke its fingers through the sky. The apprentice sits beside the flour sack, dusted head to toe like a half-baked ghost. He's trying not to fall asleep. You toss him a heel of yesterday's loaf and tell him to chew slowly. It's dry enough to double as a roof tile. You think back to when you were him. Smaller, hungrier. Your master's voice like a storm cloud, always overhead. You'd rise early, sleep late, and dream of owning your own fire. Now here you are, with burns on every knuckle and a recipe you've never written down. Outside, a horse clops past. Probably the milkman. Poor soul starts even earlier than you. You nod in respect, though he can't see you. The city is still mostly asleep. Except for the bakers, always the bakers. You check the dough again. It's rising, slowly, proudly. You press a finger into it. The indentation lingers, then gently puffs back, like breath, like life. You sit, again, but only briefly, because now it's time to prepare the workspace. You dust the boards, oil the bench, and set out the shaping tools. Blades, baskets, cloths, all familiar, all essential, each with its own memory. That scar on your left hand from the blade. That crooked finger from a proving basket splinter that festered for weeks. You hear the apprentice humming. It's off-key, but comforting. You don't stop him. Time stretches now. Waiting, watching. The dough breathes, the fire steadies. Your back aches in a way that's less pain and more identity. You've become shaped by this room just like the loaves you're about to make. You glance at the flour sack, half empty already. You'll need more by tomorrow. Maybe trade with the miller. Maybe grumble at him for sneaking in those suspicious chalky flecks again. The dough is ready. You tip it out onto the floured bench and its size heavy, warm, compliant. The mother has done her job. You divide by eye, not by weight. A cut here, a pull there. You know what a 1-pound loaf feels like in your palm, what it should feel like. You press gently, shaping each round with slow circular motions. It's calming, meditative. The dough resists, then gives in. The apprentice copies you, poorly. His loaves look like startled animals. You bite your tongue and fix them when he's not looking. Shaping is a quiet thing, a private thing. You don't talk much during this part. The loaves need your full attention. Like children, they know when you're distracted. As the final shape is formed, you cover the dough again and return it to its warm corner. One more rise. Just one. The fire dims slightly. You feed it a thin stick and smile. So much effort for something people will eat without thinking. Tear into, smear with cheese, leave crusts on the table. But you know, you've seen what this dough has been through, what you've been through. And the day hasn't even begun. You dust your hands, glance at the bench, and realize the apprentice has used twice as much flour as needed again. The boy's got enthusiasm. Unfortunately, that's the one ingredient you can't measure or sweep off the floor. Now comes the part modern cooks would fear most, the moment you measure by instinct. No scales, no timers, no notebooks with neat conversions or tidy metric weights. Just the feel of the dough, the heat of the air, and your gut. You reach for a handful of flour and toss it across the bench. Not too much you're shaping, not building a snowbank. Then, with sleeves rolled high, you lift the dough again. It's sticky elastic, warm with life. You slap it down hard. It thwacks the wood like a drum beat. Then again. Rhythm matters. It's not just sound, it's structure. The apprentice flinches. Is that supposed to happen? You grunt. Only if you want bread, not porridge. It's strange how quiet the world still is. The city hasn't begun to breathe yet, and here you are, elbow deep in dough like it's the most normal thing in the world. Which for you it is. Your fingertips know the difference between too wet and almost too wet. Between sticky and silky. You adjust with a flick of flour here, a pinch of water there. Historians still argue whether early bakers followed unwritten formulas or just operated on raw, honed experience. Most evidence suggests it was the latter. Apprentices learned by watching, copying, failing, and eventually feeling when things were right. Your master used to smack the side of your head and shout, "Eyes lie. Hands don't, and hands don't lie." You've spent years learning what good dough feels like. The stretch, the tension, the whisper it gives you when it's ready. A quirky note. In Renaissance Bologna, bakers were known to chew a pinch of raw dough between their teeth to taste the airiness, a method half superstition, half practical test. You've tried it. It mostly tastes like glue and regret. Now the kneading begins in earnest. You throw your weight into it, press, push, fold, twist. The dough pushes back, then yields. It's not just a process, it's a duel. And the dough always starts smug. Your muscles heat up, your back tightens, and your palms burn with friction. But slowly, steadily, the dough becomes smooth, polished, obedient. The apprentice tries to mimic you. He grunts like he's wrestling a pig and ends up flattening the dough into something that resembles a medieval saddle. You let him keep at it. Pain is an excellent teacher, and calluses don't grow from compliments. You pause, flex your fingers. Sweat dots your brow. The oven murmurs behind you like a hungry stomach. The room smells like yeast and smoke and wood and everything that comes before breakfast, but after dreaming. You grab the dough, fold it like a letter, and press down again. You feel the tension building gluten, that magical thread that holds everything together. You don't need to know the word. You just know how it feels. How it tightens when the dough's ready and sags when you've overworked it. Too dry, the apprentice asks, pointing at his sad, cracking lump. You shake your head, too scared. He stares. You have to commit. Half-hearted dough makes half-hearted bread. He nods solemnly and immediately overcorrects by slamming it like a blacksmith. You sigh. The boy will get there. Or he'll leave for candle making like your cousin. You let the dough rest again, covered in a damp cloth. The bench is scattered with flour trails like a map of effort. You take a swig of cider and lean against the hearth. The fire, now quieter, keeps its heat steady. You resist the temptation to open the oven mouth too soon. Every time you check, it cools slightly. And a Renaissance oven doesn't forgive impatience. Neither does the bread. A knock on the back door. You frown. Too early for deliveries. You open it a crack and see Marguerite the widow from across the alley holding a basket. Morning, she mutters, cheeks pink from the cold. Got some rosemary for you. You nod. She places the bundle on the bench, brushing her hands off on her skirts. Smells ready in here. You gesture toward the resting dough. Wants to be bread. Not there yet. She chuckles. Same as my son. You both laugh softly, the kind of laugh people make before the sun comes up and expectations haven't fully arrived. She leaves, and the bakery is quiet again. You add the rosemary to one batch. Just a touch flavoring bread isn't common in your town, but some wealthier clients prefer it. You'll make a few herbed loaves and mark them with a carved notch. Otherwise, someone will accuse you of cheating. Your master once got fined for adding lard to a loaf meant to be lean. Bread was political then. Still is. One wrong sprinkle of spice, and suddenly you're summoned to the guild house with a fine and 3 angry aldermen. You return to the dough. It's ready for final shaping now. You feel it in your shoulders, in your breath. You press and fold again, shaping each loaf carefully. Round slightly flattened with a gentle seam tucked beneath. You dust them lightly with flour, score them with a blade, a quick slash across the top, shallow but precise. Not decoration. A place for the steam to escape. Otherwise the loaf might explode. The apprentice slices 1 too deep. You don't scold. He flinches anyway. They'll call that one the screamer. You murmur, and he laughs a little embarrassed. Still, it's a sound of progress. You place the loaves in baskets lined with linen and return them to their warm resting place. The final proof. It's almost time. You rub your arms, stretch your back, and glance outside. The sky has turned a tired gray blue. The world is stirring. You hear carts, distant hooves, a few shouts. But in here, it's still the breath before. You whisper one more line to the dough. Something silly, something old. Rise like the sun, or at least like your older cousin. You don't remember where you learned that, but the dough always seems to listen. The loaves rest like sleeping animals, round-floured, expectant. You don't poke them, you don't rush them, you wait. And while they rise, you knead again. Not more dough, your own body. Stretching sore arms, cracking stiff knuckles, rubbing the back of your neck where yesterday's burns are still tender. No one ever tells apprentices how physical baking is. It's not a dainty trade. It's not the delicate art they'll paint centuries from now in warm oil portraits with cherubic cheeks and perfect golden crusts. It's work. Messy, heavy, constant work. You roll your shoulder and feel something pop. Probably not ideal. The fire crackles. It's time. You test the oven once more, not with a thermometer because those won't exist for another few hundred years. You toss in a twist of paper-thin dough scrap. It hisses, curls, blackens, not instantly. Perfect. The loaves are ready too. You know, without touching. They've risen just enough. Any more and they'll deflate. Any less and they'll bake up squat and ashamed. This is the tightrope. The sacred moment. You prepare your peel, the long-handled flat board for sliding loaves into the oven. You flour it steady, it breathe. Then you load. Each loaf slides onto the oven stone with a whisper and a puff of flour. You move fast but gentle. One wrong jostle, one crooked angle, and the dough collapses. You've seen it happen, loaves that fold inward like they've lost the will to live. And there's no fixing it after that. Bread like pride doesn't forgive a rough awakening. The apprentice holds his breath as he watches. Good. Fear means he's paying attention. You load 8 loaves, 10 if they're small. Your oven's wide but temperamental. Some spots run hotter, others cooler. You place the more fragile loaves toward the edges. Rotate as needed. No timers, just intuition. You've learned to smell when a crust is forming. You've learned to hear when bread is done, tiny cracks and sighs as the surface sets. A fun little fringe fact: in some rural towns, bakers would put a coin or bean inside one of the loaves as a kind of edible lottery. Whoever found it supposedly had good luck or a chipped tooth. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine custom or a story baked up by old bakers to keep children excited about crust. Your master tried it once. The local priest bit into the coin and cursed so loud the shutters shook. You've avoided novelty bread ever since. You wipe your hands on your apron and take a breath. The bakery is hot now. Really hot. The fire, the oven, your own sweat. It wraps around you like a wool blanket dipped in soup. But this is how it's supposed to be. A baker who isn't sweating isn't working. Or he's dead. Possibly both. You sit for a second on the edge of a flour sack, eyes on the oven. Waiting, watching. The loaves begin to change. You can't see it at first. But then the edges firm. The domes rise slightly more. The crust begins to color. The scent hits first. Sharp, sour, rich. Bread scent, not just flour and heat. This is more, deeper. It smells like memory. Like home. Like the thing you always wanted as a child but didn't have a word for. You glance at the apprentice. He's entranced. Good. You don't speak. Not now. He'll ruin it. You check the oven again. One loaf herbed needs turning. You ease it sideways with a curved hook, just a fraction of movement to avoid scorching. One charred edge and your nobleman customer will send his manservant with passive-aggressive threats and a request for refund in Latin. You step back and wait. Bakers have always waited. Here's the thing most people never understand. Baking isn't fast. Not real baking. Renaissance bakers like you, you're masters of pause. You wait for dough to rise. You wait for ovens to heat. You wait for loaves to color. Time isn't the enemy, it's the collaborator. Your most frustrating, stubborn, beautiful collaborator. A creak behind you. The apprentice shifted, almost fell off the stool. You give him a look, and he straightens like a soldier. Minutes pass. You glance at the ceiling beams, counting not seconds, but breaths. The fire settles into a quiet rhythm. The loaves begin to crackle, tiny, subtle sounds of expansion, of transformation. It's a music you've come to love. And then, like magic, it happens. The first loaf finishes. You know it not because of the color, though it's golden with a hint of ash. Not because of the smell, though it could seduce an angel. You know because of the sound. That faint papery crack as the crust begins to cool. A song only finished bread can sing. You nod to yourself. Then you act. You take the peel, slide it gently beneath the first loaf, and lift. It resists just slightly, then comes free. The weight is perfect, solid but light. You tap the bottom, hollow, like a drum. Done. The others follow quickly. You remove them in order, first in, first out. You know which is which. You didn't mark them. You didn't need to. You set them on the cooling boards. The air is cooler here by the back wall under the small cracked window. The bread exhales, cooling. The crust tightens, then settles. You brush a flake of burnt flour from the top. The apprentice reaches to touch. You slap his hand. Not yet, you say. They're still becoming themselves. He frowns, but nods. You think he's starting to understand. The bakery smells divine. No incense could match it. Outside, the first hints of dawn glow over the rooftops. And across the city, other ovens are opening. Other loaves are cracking. You're not the only baker. But in this moment in this room, you feel like you are. You step outside just for a breath of air. The street is quiet. The stars are fading. The bakery door behind you breathes warm, yeasty clouds into the crisp pre-morning. And your loaves are done. Before breakfast, you close the bakery door behind you and it clicks softly into place. The loaves are cooling, lined up like sleepy soldiers on the wooden rack. You've done your part for now. But before these golden rounds find their way into baskets, into markets, into the mouths of tired mothers and cranky children, they must finish their last invisible task, resting. You glance at the apprentice. He's eyeing the loaves like they owe him money. You hold up a finger before he can reach again. They talk while they cool, you say. He blinks. What do they say? They tell you if they'll keep or go stale, if you nailed it, or if tomorrow's gossip starts with your crust. He doesn't laugh. He's trying to listen. Good. So you both sit on flour sacks, in silence. The quiet is new, the kind of hush that makes you notice everything. The flake of ash floating down from the chimney, the soft pop as a crust line deepens the ache in your thighs. That's just shy of agony, but too familiar to fear. This moment is the pause before the day begins. The moment between making and giving. The sacred pause. The apprentice breaks it. So, do we sell them now? You shake your head. Not yet. He deflates like underproved dough. You almost smile. These next minutes are the hardest for someone new. Waiting without doing. You've shaped, you've baked. But you can't rush the cool. Sell a hot loaf and the inside turns to mush before the buyer gets it home. You've seen it, patrons slicing into fresh bread with joy in their eyes, only to stare in horror at the gummy middle. That's how riots start, or worse, complaints to the guild. You sip the last of your cider lukewarm now. The apprentice fidgets. You remember fidgeting. You also remember the first time your master let you carry the bread to the market. You dropped a whole tray into a puddle. The baker's wife nearly wept. You swore never again, and you didn't. Outside, the faint rattle of carts begins. Somewhere in the distance, bells begin to toll. Not for you, not yet. These bells mark the start of life for everyone else. You've been up for hours. The loaves finish cooling. You can tell? They stop crackling. The scent settles. The crust holds its form. You lift one gently, always gently, and press a thumb to the side. crisp, hollow. The bottom bears the slight pattern of the oven stone, proof of where it's been. You nod. It's time. The apprentice grins and moves to gather baskets. You hand him 2, not 3. He isn't ready for 3. He stumbles slightly as he loads the loaves, balancing them like treasure. And in a way they are. You slide the larger loaves into another basket. These go to the monastery down the road. The brothers order the same number every day, but they always pretend it's a surprise when you arrive. You humor them. After all, they pay in coin and wisdom. You mark the rosemary loaves with a quick flick of a heated metal stamp, your symbol. A half moon and dot. Every baker has one. Without it, bread is just bread. With it, it's yours. It protects against copycats, or at least accusers. Fun little fringe law. In some towns, bakers were required to stamp every single loaf with a unique mark or face fines. Historians still argue whether it was quality control or just an early form of humble bragging. The apprentice leans close. Why do we mark them? You raise an eyebrow, so no one blames you for someone else's bad crust. He nods. He still doesn't understand. He will. Now comes the wait. Again. The moment between bread and breakfast, when the city begins to breathe and the bakery begins to listen. You sweep the floor, not because it needs it, but because it feels right. You scrub the benches, oil the wooden spoons, sharpen the dough blade. Ritual, routine. This is the part of baking most folks never think about. The silence after the storm, the cleanup that carries its own kind of reverence. The apprentice tries to help but gets flour everywhere. You sigh. At least it's flour and not egg. You haven't used eggs in weeks, prices shot up again, and most customers can't afford enriched dough. Simpler is safer. Outside, the noise builds. Boots on cobblestone. Shutters opening. Someone curses at a donkey. The world is waking. You check the loaves one last time. Then you nod to the apprentice. Go. He hesitates. Alone, you nod again. He lifts the basket's arms, straining, and stumbles out the door. A puff of bread-scented air follows him into the dawn. You listen. No crash. No scream. So far, so good. You sit again just for a moment and let your hands rest on your knees. The hearth is dimming. The oven cools. The fire, like you, is spent for now. And then the knocking starts. Your first customer. A woman with red cheeks and 3 children in tow. She smiles with sleepy desperation. Do you have the usual? You nod. Lift 2 warm loaves and place them in her basket. Her children peek over the rim, wide-eyed and hopeful. She thanks you like you've handed her gold. And maybe in this town, at this hour, you have. The line forms before the light fully settles. Not a proper line. There's no rope, no stanchions. Just a loose, shuffling crowd of early risers. Fishermen with rough hands, washerwomen with babies slung on hips, a cranky nobleman steward who keeps sniffing like the bread might be beneath him, but still buys 4 loaves every morning. You nod at each face. Some speak, some don't. Most know what they want before they step across the threshold. A lean loaf, a brown one. A bit with the crust extra dark. You don't have signs. No chalkboard with flavors. No laminated menu. You are the menu. The apprentice returns, cheeks flushed with 2 empty baskets and a grin that says he didn't drop anything. You almost let yourself feel proud. Then he trips on the threshold and nearly face plants into the rosemary batch. Close call. You send him to fetch another sack of flour from the storeroom. He salutes. Poorly. Customers come and go. Coins clink. Bread vanishes. Still warm, most of it. You save a few loaves for the later rush, those strange souls who sleep in. But for now, the bakery hums. And not just from the oven. It's the gossipy heat of the communal oven that fills the air. Because here's the thing, while your bakery has its own oven, it isn't big enough for the town's demands. Not during feast weeks, not on holy days. That's when the forno commune, the shared town oven, comes into play. And yes, it's exactly as chaotic as it sounds. You hand off the last of the small rounds and begin loading your second dough batch into baskets. These are still raw-shaped and ready, but unbaked. Because the communal oven isn't just a big fireplace, it's a social arena. You cover the dough with cloth, balance the trays on your shoulder like a waiter, and step out into the early sun. The apprentice trails behind, carrying the rest and mumbling under his breath. Probably a prayer. Or a list of who not to anger. The communal oven sits at the end of the lane, just beyond the square. It's a squat stone structure with a wide chimney and an iron door big enough to roast a small elephant if you were so inclined. Which you are not. Not since that one pig roast that got out of hand. There's already a crowd, bakers from the West End, the widow who makes honey bread once a week, a visiting monk who insists on using rye flour and quietly judges everyone else. And of course, Gaspard. You don't like Gaspard. He's fast, too fast, uses less salt, bakes at higher heat, sells cheaper loaves, and grins like it's all a game. His bread tastes like warm cardboard, but somehow people still buy it. You nod at him. Barely. He nods back, smugly. The oven keeper emerges, old Matteo, wrapped in soot and sarcasm. He wipes his hands on a rag that's been black since the last plague and opens the door with a groan that could belong to the iron or to his spine. Who's first? You all look at one another. No one wants to seem eager. The monk bows. Please after you. Polite liar. The widow jumps in. I've got 2 trays and a prayer meeting in 10 minutes. She's lying too, but charmingly. You wait. Not because you're humble, but because you've timed it right. Your dough needs 4 more minutes. Let them rush. Let Gaspard's crust split from steam stress. You'll take the calm slot. While you wait, you people watch. Here's something most people forget. The communal oven isn't just for baking. It's for talking. News spreads here faster than butter on hot crust. You overhear 3 conspiracies, 2 marriage proposals, and a mildly scandalous joke about the bishop's cook in the span of 5 minutes. You pretend not to listen. Everyone pretends not to listen, but everyone hears. A quirky tidbit. In some villages, bakers were known to hide love letters in the cracks of the communal oven wall. Messages passed through heat and flour dust. One was even found decades later, scorched but legible. Tell Marta I forgive her. The bread was perfect. Romantic or terrifying, historians still argue. Old Matteo waves you forward. Your turn if you're done eavesdropping. You step forward. The oven roars hotter than yours, deeper. A dragon's yawn. You work fast. Slide the loaves in, mark the ones that are for the magistrate's wife, she likes hers just barely golden, and set the timer in your head. No hourglasses here. Just rhythm and the feel of sweat sliding down your temples. You back away. The iron door slams. You sit on the bench and exhale. The bench is warm. Always warm. Years of bakers waiting like you. You watch Gaspard fumble a tray. One of his loaves lands crust down in the ash. You smile. Just a little. It's the small joys. The apprentice joins you. He's eating a burnt end of yesterday's loaf like it's a feast. You'll learn more here than at the guild house, you mutter. He chews thoughtfully. Because of the oven, no. Because of the lies. He looks confused. He usually does. While your loaves bake, you trade small talk. A new flour blend from the northern mill. A broken scale scandal. Someone's cousin trying to bake gluten-free rye without divine intervention. That one gets laughs. Then the smell hits. Your loaves are done. Mateo opens the door. Steam pours out. The loaves are gorgeous, rounded, even crusted just right. You retrieve them with practiced grace, flipping each to listen for the sound of completion. Hollow, warm, finished. As you head back toward your bakery, arms full of hot bread, someone calls after you. Your rosemary batch was too good last week. You're making the rest of us look lazy. You grin. Then someone else shouts, Gaspar says, you overproof, you don't respond. You let the bread speak for you. You return to your shop with your arms full of triumph and blistering heat. The loaves from the communal oven are still singing the soft, crisp crackle of crust, adjusting to open air. They're darker than the first batch, kissed by flames you don't fully control, and they smell like smoke and something deeper. These are the show loaves. The ones that end up on noble tables in church baskets or clutched proudly by a merchant's wife who insists she could bake them herself if she had the time. She can't. And she won't. The apprentice tries to help unload, but his fingers linger too long on one of the hot crusts. He yelps, drops the loaf, and scrambles to recover it before it hits the floor. You shoot him a look sharp enough to slice ciabatta. You mark it now, you say. He frowns. Mark it. How? With shame. He blinks. Do we have a symbol for that? You smirk. We do now. You set the loaves on the cooling racks, everyone precisely spaced with airflow in mind. You've lost loaves to poor spacing before. Crusts gone soft. Bottoms grown soggy. The horror. Then you grab the stamp. Not the herbed loaf stamp, not the family crest for that noble family who insists on unnecessary flourishes. Your stamp. The half moon and dot. With a metal rod heated at the edge of the hearth, you brand each crust, not deep, not aggressive, just enough to say this one's mine. A faint hiss. A wisp of scorched flour. The mark remains. Branding bread might seem dramatic, but here's your mainstream fact of the morning by the 15th century in cities like Paris and Florence. Bakers were required by law to mark their loaves. Why? Because bread fraud was a real crime. Undersized loaves, adulterated flour loaves sold as fresh when they were anything but, it all happened. The mark kept you honest, or at least accountable, and it protected your name, your reputation, because bread isn't anonymous. It's personal. If a customer bites into something too hard, too soft, too salty, too bland, they remember. And then they talk. You learned that the hard way, years ago. A hot summer sour flour, too much salt by mistake. One bad batch, and the gossips had you burying loaves behind the tannery in shame. You didn't, but you thought about it. Now you mark everything. The apprentice watches you burn each symbol in with reverence. He asks if he can try. You give him a small roll to practice on. He scorches it. A puff of smoke. The smell of regret. You nod. Closer. He beams. Then comes the wrapping. Not paper. Cloth. Reused. Washed. Frayed at the corners. You wrap loaves for the wealthier customers, the ones who don't want market air touching their food. You also send cloth with the magistrate's order. He returns it each week, folded stiffly and probably ironed by someone underpaid. The apprentice wraps with the subtlety of a drunken juggler. One loaf looks like it's being prepared for burial, another like it's mid-escape. You fix them silently. Then just as you're settling into a brief moment of peace, she walks in. Mariette, the rival baker's daughter. She's older than your apprentice, younger than you, and twice as clever as either of you put together. She doesn't come to buy. She comes to inspect. She strolls in like she owns the cobbles beneath her feet, eyes sweeping the racks with cool disapproval. You don't flinch. You're marking higher these days, she says, eyeing your latest loaves. You shrug. New stamp. She narrows her eyes. Looks a bit like mine. You lift an eyebrow. Yours is a crescent and a dot. Mine is a half moon and a dot. That's the same thing. Not if you rotate it. She snorts. Still stealing from me, I see. You smile. Still dreaming, I see. She sniffs a rosemary crust, nods grudgingly. This one's not terrible. High praise. She leaves without buying anything, but makes sure to drop a casual father says the guild's inspecting weights next week. You nod. You were already over-prepping for that. But still, information received. As she walks out, the apprentice turns to you wide-eyed. Is she always like that? You nod. That was her being polite. He exhales. I think I'm scared of her. Good instinct. You return to the back where your ledger waits. Each loaf, each coin, each customer, you track it all. Not because you enjoy numbers, but because losing track is losing control. And the guild never forgets. Here's another quirky truth. Some bakers used secret code marks, tiny slashes on the underside of loaves to signal specific deals like paid in advance or watch for complaints. You've done it. You still do. There's a notch system on your drying rack. The apprentice hasn't noticed. Yet. You finish wrapping the magistrate's order. 7 loaves. 1 sweetened for his daughter. You tie the bundle with twine and seal it with a dab of wax, not because it needs sealing, but because they expect it. As you place it by the door ready for pickup, you pause and glance at the racks again, half empty already. And it's not even mid-morning. You stretch your back, your spine pops like a crust. Outside, a vendor shouts about onions. A goat bleats. Somewhere someone's arguing over cheese. But in here it's quieter, warm, the air heavy with smoke and pride. The apprentice returns with more flour panning. You nod. He drops the sack with a grunt, brushes flour off his shirt and grins. You eye him. You ready to start the second mix? His smile fades. Then he sighs. Then he nods. Because it never ends. And that's the point. The second mix begins not with excitement, but with resignation. You dump flour onto the bench. Again. Water into the well. Again. A fresh scoop of starter pulled from the mother dough that's been resting by the hearth. Again. Same dance. Same fire. Same ache in your shoulder. The bread doesn't care if you're tired. And neither do the customers. But this time, something new slides into the mix, not in the dough, but in the air. The guild inspectors are coming. Mariette didn't say it to be kind. She said it to rattle you. And it works. Because every baker knows what bread laws mean. They're not gentle suggestions. They're commandments inked on parchment and backed by fines, public shaming, and in one memorable case, in Bruges bread dunking. Public. In a vat of leftover porridge. You've avoided trouble for years, but inspectors are like rats. They know when you're cornered, tired, 1 sack short of your regular flour order. They show up when you least expect it with cold scales and colder eyes. You glance at your weights and measures board. You use a marked iron scoop for flour, a wooden rod for water. You've checked them 100 times. They're accurate. Still, you feel that twitch in your gut. Because here's the mainstream truth. By the late Renaissance, cities took bread very seriously. In Paris, Florence, Milan, even London loaves were weighed by the ounce. If a baker shorted a customer even by a mouthful, they faced punishment. Fines, whippings, stocks. In some cases, being banned from baking for months. Why so harsh? Because bread wasn't just food. It was survival. Flour prices rose, bread riots. Grain shipment delayed bread riots. The baker skimmed dough to make more loaves. You guessed it, bread riots. You check the flour again. You've heard whispers. The miller's been accused again of cutting flour with chalk to make it heavier. It gives loaves a ghost pale crust and a strange aftertaste. Your customers would notice. You lift a handful, rub it between your fingers. Fine, a little too fine. Could be nothing, could be dust, or could be a trap. You sigh, call over the apprentice. He trips over a bucket, again. Test this, you say, handing him a bowl of water. If it clouds, toss the sack. He nods, eyes wide. Why would it cloud? Because honest flour doesn't try to float. That one goes over his head. He'll get it someday. You return to the dough. Kneading again. Folding. This one's for the late buyers, the workers who stagger in just before noon. If you get the mix right, the loaves will be slightly smaller but denser satisfying. Legal weight, but cost efficient. A trick passed down from baker to baker. But the line is thin. Too dense and you'll get called out. Too light and the inspector's scale will tilt like a guillotine. And here's the part you hate sometimes. You have to bribe. No one says it, but everyone knows. 1 coin, slipped into a cloth napkin, 1 free loaf for the road, a warm seat in the back. Not every inspector bites, but the ones who do expect it. Historians still argue whether the bribery system was widespread or a few bad apples. But ask any working baker from Florence to Ghent, and you'll get the same answer: we do what we must to keep baking. You rub your temples. The heat isn't helping. The oven's been going since midnight. The fire has dropped to coals perfect for low, slow baking. But your patience is running thin. You glance at your coin stash, hidden behind a false bottom in the flour chest, just in case. Then the bell rings. Not the customer bell, the guild bell. It's faint off in the town square, but it means they've entered the bakery ward, checking random shops, weighing loaves, measuring counters, smelling for sourness. You straighten your apron brush off the flour. Adjust your cap. You don't need them today, but still better to look like you always follow protocol. The apprentice returns, triumphant. No cloud. You nod. Relief is a luxury you don't indulge in until the inspectors leave. You shape the new batch of loaves, moving efficiently. They'll be smaller but rich, made with some of the older starter, which gives a deeper tang. A flavor that sells well to the merchants who believe in complex bread, though they wouldn't know a rye from a rye wannabe. You mark these loaves with a single edge slash. Not your signature, just a batch sign. If the guild asks, you can prove when they were made. You check the door. No shadow yet. The apprentice whispers, "What if they pick us?" They won't. They might. They probably will. A long pause. What do? You look him in the eye. We give them what they came for. Bread that holds weight. Crust that talks back. And not a single crumb more than they deserve. He nods. Slowly, you both fall into rhythm, wrapping the early loaves for delivery, cleaning the cooling racks, tidying the hearth. The whole place hums with the energy of pretend everything is always this clean. Then the knock comes. Not a customer knock. A dull, deliberate one, like judgment wrapped in wood. You answer. 2 men, plain cloaks, one carries scales, the other carries the expression of someone who was born disappointed. Guild inspection. You nod, step back, gesture them in. They survey everything. The floor, the racks, the weight board, the sourdough bowl. They lift a loaf from the fresh batch. The plain kind. Your Mark 1 asks. You point to the stamp cooling beside the hearth. He tests the crust, knocks the bottom, taps it, then sets it on the scale. It passes. Barely. But it passes. You breathe. They check one more. An older loaf. Then another. Then ask to see your flour. You nod. You've already pulled the sack. They scoop, smell, taste. Nothing suspicious. Yet. You answer every question calmly. You explain your proportions. You recite your dough timing like a sermon. After 20 long minutes, they nod. No violations. One of them glances at the apprentice. Clean floors. He beams. They turn to go. Then the taller one pauses. Points to the rosemary loaf. This for sale, you nod. He lifts it, sniffs, then hands you a coin. Keep doing good work. Just like that, they're gone. You close the door gently, and you laugh, not loud, just enough to release your lungs. The apprentice slumps. Are they always like that? No. Sometimes they bring dogs. He stares. You toss him a heel of bread. Eat. You've earned it. And outside, the city moves on, unaware you've just survived a kind of war. You survived the guild inspection. But now you have to survive something far worse, flour theft. It doesn't announce itself with knocking. It doesn't wear a cloak or carry scales. It slinks in quietly, slowly, and always when you're too tired to notice. At first, it's just a feeling. The way a sack feels suspiciously lighter than you remember. The way a batch comes up one loaf short. Maybe it was the apprentice. Maybe the flour was packed too loosely. Maybe you miscalculated. But deep down, you know. Someone's skimming. You eye the back storeroom, a dark corner behind the unused baskets. The door creaks in protest. Inside barrels sacks old tools and the faint scent of mildew. You count your flour sacks. 6. You had 8. You should have 8. You feel the familiar tickle of rage low in your throat. You call the apprentice. He appears instantly flour-smudged and sweaty-looking guilty before you even speak. A promising start. How many sacks came in this week? 8, he says, and then adds, I think. You stare. He sweats harder. You walk past him and pull the ledger. Each sack's arrival is marked in your cramped handwriting. 8. You flip forward to your notes on output. The math isn't mathing. The apprentice tries to help. Could the mice have taken some? You turn slowly. Mice don't carry off 50 pounds. He shrinks back. Big mice. You exhale through your nose. Because here's the truth. You're not the only one who's noticed things missing. Last week, the widow baker down the road swore someone had lifted her yeast water. The week before, that old Ferruccio claimed someone made off with 2 jars of rendered fat. The bakery district is full of suspects. Apprentices who sneak supplies to their cousins, bakers who pad their stalls with stolen goods, or worse, runners. Men who sneak into shops at night and lift flour by the scoop one handful at a time until an entire sack vanishes over a week. Historians still argue whether flour theft was considered petty or punishable. In some towns, it meant a slap on the wrist. In others, a full public lashing. In one bizarre case in Nuremberg, the accused was forced to eat raw dough until he vomited a punishment that stuck with bakers more than it should have. You don't want to overreact, but you also don't want to end up known as the bakery that can't keep its cupboards closed. You set a trap. A small sack, half full, left temptingly close to the rear window. You dust the windowsill lightly with flour, just enough that a misplaced boot or hand will leave a mark. You place an empty jug just inside the window's edge. One bump and it'll clatter. Simple, effective, hopefully not necessary. Then you wait. Well, sort of. You knead dough while you wait. You prep the last batch for the day, smaller, softer rolls and buns. The kind people want with afternoon tea, or in the case of the blacksmith's wife, to soak up the bitterness of life. The apprentice asks if you're making the honeyed batch. You shake your head. Sugar's too expensive this month. You're not wasting it unless you have a festival. You glance at the trap, still undisturbed. You try not to be paranoid. But then your neighbor stops by. Tall, cheerful, suspiciously well-fed despite complaining loudly about the rising cost of flour. He pokes his head into the bakery, sniffs, and says, "Smells like success." You nod slowly. Smells like someone didn't pay for their last loaf. He laughs like you've made a joke. You didn't. He leaves quickly. You mark his name in the ledger with a small dot. Just a dot. No accusations. Yet. You finish the afternoon rolls. Crisp on the outside, soft inside. Your apprentice samples one and nods, mouth full. These are better than gas bars. You give a small smile. You didn't ask, but you needed to hear it. Then the trap goes off. Clang. You rush to the back room. The jug is rolling. The flour on the sill is smudged. You throw the door open. No one. But in the alley, footprints. Bare, small, running away. You sigh. Not a rival. Not a thief. A child. Again. You find him hiding behind the tannery. Muddy, thin, bread crust clutched in one hand like a treasure. He looks up at you like you're death himself. You don't shout. You just stare. Then you kneel. How much did you take? He shrugs. Why Mama said, make it stretch. You nod. Quietly. You've heard worse. You reach into your apron and hand him a roll. Warm, unmarked. No one will miss it. Next time you say ask. He runs. You know he won't ask. But he might not steal. At least not from you. You return to the shop. Untouched, your apprentice is wiping up the spilled flour from the knocked jug. He looks at you confused. What happened? Nothing important. You sweep up. Dust your hands. Reset the trap this time without bait. Not for thieves, for peace of mind. Because in this trade, you don't just bake bread. You defend it. From rats, from rivals, from regulations, from hunger itself. And you'll keep defending it until the sack is truly empty. The flour sack sits heavier on your mind than on your shelf. You light the evening lamp, and the bakery glows gold. The fire's low, the day's batch is complete, and the shop smells like warmth, crust, and the ghost of rosemary. But your thoughts drift to yesterday's delivery from the miller. You remember the moment clearly now. The way he avoided your eye. The way the sack strings were tied too tight, like someone trying too hard to look normal. You brush flour off your sleeves and step outside. It's time to pay him a visit. The apprentice offers to come. You wave him off. Stay. Sweep. He looks offended, as if sweeping weren't an essential part of the sacred bread arts. You walk the path to the mill boots, tapping over uneven stone. It's further out near the stream where the wheel groans and turns like a tired giant. The air smells wetter here. Less yeast, more moss. The miller greets you with forced cheer. His shirt is clean, too clean. His flour bin is full, too full. You nod. He nods. You stare at each other like two cats unsure who owns the doorstep. Flour's holding steady this week, he says. You grunt. So I noticed. He shifts his weight. His smile thins. You've danced this dance before. You point to a sack near the corner. That one's too light. He shrugs. Different batch. Drier grain. Drier doesn't mean lighter. It can, unless you're mixing in ground chalk again. The air stills. He laughs. That rumor again. Here's a historical nugget for your collection. Some millers did mix in chalk plaster or ground up bone to extend their flour, especially during shortages. It made the product whiter, heavier, and in some cases, mildly poisonous. Bakers noticed, customers noticed more. One bad loaf, and suddenly the baker, not the miller, was blamed. You step closer, not threatening. but not backing down. I lose customers, I lose everything. He nods, suddenly serious. I swear this batch was clean. You don't trust him, but you trust that he knows you are watching now. Next sack, you say, I test before I bake. Understood. You nod once and leave. The walk back is quiet. Just your boots and your thoughts and the soft churn of the mill wheel behind you. You pass carts full of apples, a boy chasing a chicken, and a nobleman's servant carrying cheese like it's the Ark of the Covenant. By the time you return, the apprentice has swept mostly. He's also eaten 2 rolls and somehow managed to flour his own eyebrows. You set a clean cloth on the bench and begin preparing tomorrow's starter. The mother doe is sluggish, it's been a long day. You feed her gently, folding in warm water and fresh flour, whispering nonsense under your breath, like always. She doesn't bubble back yet, but she will. She alive, the apprentice asks. Resting. He nods solemnly, as if you're referring to an ancient queen. Then you teach him how to fold the cloth for fermentation. Not just cover it, tuck it. Tight corners. No gaps. You explain how drafts can ruin a rise, how the dough likes comfort the same way people do. You glance at the ledger. Tomorrow is market day. You'll need to double the morning batch. Maybe bake sweet rolls if the miller's flour does come clean. You hope so. The merchant's wife wants something with cinnamon, which is a hilarious request, considering cinnamon costs more than her husband's horse. Still, you plan it. Baking is hope disguised as labor. You settle into your stool and begin preparing the delivery sheets. Scratchy quills smudged ink your name at the top of each parchment. The apprentice yawns. You can sleep, you say. I want to see how the mother doe wakes. You smirk. That'll take hours. I can wait. He can't. 10 minutes later, he's snoring, head on the flour bin, cheek dusted white like a ghost in training. You let him stay there. His dreams probably smell like crust. Then you light the second lamp, because your job's not done. Now comes inventory. You count sacks, jars, scoops. You note every missing ounce, every cracked tool, every cloth that smells like it's given up on life. You sharpen the dough blade. You oil the wooden peel. You reorganize the drying shelf with military precision, because even if no one else cares, you do. A quirky fact in Venice, some bakers kept ledgers so obsessively detailed that scholars found records not just of ingredients, but also of dreams. One wrote, dreamed of bread rising without fire. Awoke afraid. You respect that. Baking consumes you, even asleep. The fire's just embers now. You bank it with ash, whisper your nightly farewell. Rest well, old girl. The oven creaks softly in reply. You glance at the sleeping apprentice. He shifts, murmurs something about crust and justice. You chuckle. You return to the bench, sip cool water, and check the mother doe one last time. She's bubbling now. Small signs. Tiny bubbles like breath under skin. You exhale. Tomorrow, there will be bread. For now, there is silence. And flour on everything you own. The silence is short-lived. A thud at the door jolts you back to standing. It's not an emergency knock, just urgent enough to annoy you. You unlatch the wooden beam, swing the door open, and there he is, Emile. Emile, the apprentice you trained? Emile, who left your bakery 2 years ago to work for a baker with bigger ovens, fancier aprons, and allegedly less yelling. Emile, who now stands on your threshold, hat in hand, sheepish grin smeared across his still unburned cheeks. Evening, he says, as if he hadn't disappeared overnight with your second-best dough blade. You grunt. You lost, or just full of regrets? He laughs, then winces. Actually, I've come to borrow something. Of course he has. You lean against the doorframe. What is it this time? Flour, firewood, a personality. He sighs. An apprentice. You blink. He presses on. My new lad ran off. Says the early hours are cruel and my starter smells like foot. To be fair, you mutter your starter always smelled like foot. He chuckles. Yours still as moody as ever. You glance at your bubbling bowl. She's feeling generous this week. He peeks into your shop eyes, scanning the racks, the coals, the sleepy current apprentice still passed out with flour in his ear. Emile nods approvingly. You've kept it tidy. You raise an eyebrow. Some of us didn't trade cleanliness for speed. And here lies a long-standing debate in the world of Renaissance baking artisan versus production. Artisan bakers like you move by hand, by feel, one batch at a time, careful kneading, intentional proofing, soul in every crust. But a new breed has been rising, those who use multiple apprentices, short proof times, and wood-fired ovens the size of chapels. They bake quantity over quality. Emile went that route. Fast bread, cheaper bread, but soulless. Dry by dusk. I'll pay for a week's help, he says. You consider it. Your apprentice snores. Emile shrugs. Or if not him, maybe just advice. You cross your arms. You want advice from the baker you left? I want truth. My loaves are collapsing. Not all of them. Just the ones with oat. You wince. Oat's tricky. No gluten. Weak structure. You can't treat it like wheat dough. You have to coddle it. More water, you say. Longer rest. He nods slowly. That's it. And humility. But I doubt you'll find that in your kitchen. He bows genuinely. Thank you. You hand him an oat loaf from your rack. Still warm. Crust a little soft, interior airy. He tastes it right there in the doorway. Chews, swallows. His shoulders drop. I'd forgotten what real bread felt like. You don't reply. He leaves. Quietly. Maybe wiser. You close the door. Your apprentice stirs. Who was that ghost, you mutter? You return to the table. Check tomorrow's ingredient layout. Everything measured. Tools cleaned. Oven banked. You toss the oat loaf heel into a basket marked for the poor. It'll go out tomorrow. And then, just when you think the night is winding down, the apprentice finally speaks a full sentence. Do you ever hate it? You stop mid-wipe. Hate what this? The hours, the burns, the flour in your lungs. You lean back. Let's be honest. Yes, sometimes you hate it. The endless cycles. The aches that never quite go away. The thankless customers who complain about crust, too dark loaves, too round crumbs, too crumbly. But you also know this bread feeds people. And feeding people means they live. That matters. So you say I don't hate it. I just don't let it win. He nods. Slowly. I think I'm starting to like it. You smile. Give it a few years. You'll need it. You send him to bed finally. He protests, then yawns mid-sentence and gives up. You tuck a blanket over him just enough to keep the chill off. He's still got ash in his hair, a proper baker's crown. You blow out the wall lamp. The fire's low but still warm. You sit for a final minute, elbows on knees, looking over the silent shop. A fun fringe tidbit. Some Renaissance bakers believed that if you fell asleep with your arms covered in flour, it would bring wealth. You've done it hundreds of times. You're still waiting. You reach for a crust from a cracked loaf. Chew slowly. The outside crunches. The inside's tender. It tastes of effort, of fire, of hours no one will ever see. You eat the rest in silence. And tomorrow you'll do it again. Because someone has to. You wake before the bells again. Not because of duty, because of habit. Because once your body learns the rhythm of bread, it forgets everything else. You stretch crack every joint that still has give. and step downstairs into the familiar stillness of flour and fire. Except the apprentice is already awake. He's crouched near the hearth, staring at the mother dough like she's about to reveal ancient secrets. You clear your throat. He jumps. She's bubbling, he says, like it's a miracle. You nod. She usually does. But this time it's different. You lean over. It's not different. But his wonder is, and that's worth something. Today's shaping day. The bulk of the loaves must be formed, slashed, and prepared for the oven before the sun fully clears the rooftops. You start with a market batch, round mid-sized practical. Then the lean loaves for the parish pantry. Then a few sweetened rounds for the widow, with the 3 children, and a loyalty to your crust. The apprentice tries to shape one. It ends up looking like a sleepy potato. You fix it with 2 pulls, 1 turn. He sighs. Apprentices, you say, don't shape bread. They study it. He perks up like that was a compliment. Then the morning chaos begins. Deliveries. The vegetable seller appears at the door, huffing and puffing with a sack of onions and a suspiciously small order of flour. He says the miller's behind. You resist the urge to grind your teeth. You mark it in the ledger. 1 sack light. Again. The door opens again. This time it's Clara from the pastry stall down the road. She makes tarts so good they once got a bishop to forgive her unpaid taxes. She holds up a tray. Trade, you lift a rosemary loaf. Deal. You've been trading with Clara since she was 12. You once gave her a roll when her father's oven collapsed in a storm. Now she feeds you candied citrus like your royalty. These little trades aren't about profit, they're about peace. A quirky bit of history, Renaissance bakeries often relied on barter just as much as coin. Bread for meat, bread for milk, bread for repairs. There's even record of one baker in Milan who traded bread for song. A traveling musician paid in lullabies. Odd, yes, but probably fair music helps dough rise better. At least that's what some claim. Clara leaves. You snack on half a tart as you need. Cherry, tart enough to slap your senses awake. The fire's hungry again. You poke the coals, feed it wood. The oven roars back to life, and you whisper your usual greeting. You always greet it. The oven's seen more of your life than your own family. You check the apprentice's work. It's improved. A little. One of the loaves has a noble tilt, almost proud. You say nothing. Let him find his pride on his own. Then comes the moment that tests more than skill, the burn hour. Every baker has one. That window of time post-shaping mid-bake where everything happens at once. You're rotating loaves in the oven. You're brushing ash off the hearthstones. You're answering a knock at the back door from a merchant who wants exactly 7 rolls, no more, no less. And also, can they be not too crusty? You nod. Then immediately forget what he looks like. The apprentice calls out one of the herbed loaves has split open in the wrong place. You inspect it. Too shallow a slash. The steam escaped sideways. It happens. You scar it wrong, it opens where it wants, you mutter. He frowns. Like people, you pause. Exactly like people. You toss him a crust end. It's his reward for almost understanding metaphor. You check the communal oven schedule. You've got a slot just before noon, tight but doable. You prep the next tray. More knocks. The cheese vendor wants an order bumped. The butcher's boy asks if you'll bake his mother's meat pie in your oven, because theirs is cold and she's crying. You nod, take the wrapped pie and place it near the hearth, not in the oven, just close enough to warm. You haven't eaten in hours, but your stomach stopped keeping score years ago. You feel it, though. In your knees, in the way your breath shortens with each turn of the peel. The loaves in the oven start to darken. Not burnt, but close. Perfect if you time it right. You tap one. hollow. Done. You pull the tray just as the apprentice trips on a broomstick and nearly flings a bowl of water into the fire. You catch the bowl mid-fall. Barely. He freezes. You glare. He nods. You both know the rule: you can burn your fingers, but never the bread. The rolls are done. You lay them on the board. Small, round, glossy. You brush a few with honey glaze, a rare treat. You sigh. Still 2 hours until you rest. Still 3 deliveries, 1 guild ledger to update, and 1 very impatient noblewoman who insists your bread tastes different when her cousin eats it first. You mutter something unrepeatable. Here's a lesser-known fact: some bakers wrote fake customer reviews in their ledgers to cheer themselves up. Lady C says the crust changed her life. Sir J wept openly at the crumb. You've never gone that far, but maybe someday. The rolls cool, the crust crackles, the air thickens with heat and effort, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a whisper: this is enough. Not perfect, not profitable, but enough. Because someone will eat this roll and smile. Someone will tear this crust and forget their sadness for a moment. And that more than money, more than guild praise is why you keep kneading. Even when you're tired, even when you're 1 sack short, even when the fire bites your knuckles and the flour dust chokes your breath. You bake because someone needs it. And maybe, just maybe, you do too. The street outside is wide awake now. Vendors yell, carts rattle. A chicken makes a break for it, pursued by someone cursing in 3 languages. The town square hums like a hive, but you're standing in your shop doorway apron, damp cheeks dusted white, holding 2 baskets of warm bread, like a prizefighter holding trophies. This batch is different. Not because of ingredients, because of where it's going. You're feeding the whole city today. You hoist the baskets onto your shoulders 1 at a time. The apprentice reaches to help and nearly dislocates something. You hand him a smaller tray instead. Start with the west quarter, you say. Listen for complaints. Write them down. He nods like he's preparing for war. You head the other way toward the poorer quarter. The narrow lanes. The places where loaves are bought not with coin, but with credit. Sometimes traded, sometimes owed. You stop at the weaver's house first. Her son is waiting barefoot and wide-eyed. You hand him a loaf and ruffle his hair. He stares at it like it's gold. Next, the cooper. Then the old midwife who only eats crusts, but insists they keep her joints from locking like a bad hinge. Then a shoemaker who offers to patch your boot in exchange for a seed loaf, one you haven't made in weeks, but promise you will tomorrow. That's the deal. That's the cycle. Here's your historical reminder. In most Renaissance cities, bakers were expected, if not required, to feed both the rich and the poor. There were rules. If grain prices rose, the guild might mandate cheaper loaves, simpler ingredients, more output. If a baker refused, fines, shaming, occasionally jail. But for many of you, feeding the city isn't about the law. It's about pride. You stop in front of the potter's shop. No one's home. You knock once, leave the bread on the stool, and move on. She'll find it. She always does. You cut through the market. Clara's there selling her tarts. She winks. Gaspar is there too, trying to smile his way into someone's coin purse. You nod coolly as you pass. He pretends not to see you. His basket smells faintly burned. You reach the eastern edge by midday. The heat settles like a wet cloth across your shoulders. The bread is nearly gone, only 3 loaves left. You wipe your brow, take a sip from your flask, and pause on a bench under the shadow of a crooked tree. It smells like summer and smoke. The apprentice finds you. He's sweating, beaming one loaf, missing one complaint, scribbled too chewy. Tooth snapped. You laugh. At least it's memorable. Together, you walk back. Slow. Satisfied. You've done what bakers do, you've made bread disappear. You pass a beggar woman in the alley near your shop. You hand her the last loaf without a word. She nods, says nothing, breaks the bread, and bites in. And in that moment, you know it matters. You re-enter the bakery and set the empty baskets down. Your feet ache. Your spine makes a noise you don't love. But your heart's still warm. The apprentice flops onto a sack of flour. Do we do this every day? You nod. He stares at the ceiling. That's insane. You shrug. So's hunger. You light the hearth again, not to bake, just to keep the oven breathing. The mother dough bubbles gently, content. You feed her a bit more flour, a splash of water, like feeding a pet that might devour the world if left alone too long. You start the prep for tomorrow. Yes, already. Because dough doesn't wait. Bread doesn't ask permission. Morning will come and the city will want to be fed again. A curious aside, some bakers in Renaissance towns kept a chalkboard by the door to track debts. Not for shame, just transparency. Yours is hidden behind the flour bin. Not because you're secretive, because shame is its own ingredient. You don't want it baked into anyone's loaf. You glance at it now. 6 names. Small debts. You'll clear 2 by trade. The others, who knows? You still bake for them. You've baked for sick children, for grieving widows, for drunkards trying to sober up, for saints and sinners, and that one street juggler who swore your crust improved his balance. You've baked for the whole city, and you'll do it again, because flour and water are simple. But what you make with them, that's not simple at all. That's everything. There's one part of baking that no one writes songs about. Not the shaping, not the smell of rising dough, not even the crust crackle. It's the quiet moment before you score a loaf. You stand over the dough, round risen, full of air and hope, and raise the blade. It's not just a cut, it's a decision, a signature, a trust fall. Your apprentice watches, holding his breath. He's shaped this one. You can tell. It's lopsided, optimistic. Looks like it tried its best. You nod. Then with one swift motion, you score a single curved line along the top. The blade barely kisses the surface, but the dough responds, sighing out a puff of breath. There, you say. Now it won't explode. He looks amazed. What if we don't cut it? It tries to rise anyway. Then it bursts, ugly. Still bread, though, you think for a moment. Yes. But angry bread. He scribbles that down. You don't ask why. Here's the mainstream history bit. Scoring loaves wasn't just about preventing blowouts. It was symbolic. In many towns, bakers marked their loaves with crosses. Some did it for religious reasons, believing the sign of the cross would bless the bread. Others claimed it was superstition. If you didn't cross the dough, the devil might rise with the yeast. You've seen loaves with circles, stars, letters, even animals. But the cross remains the most common, especially before church feasts. You don't question it anymore. Habit becomes belief when repeated enough. Today's batch is for the parish. Dozens of round plain loaves. No herbs, no flair, just bread. Solid, clean, simple. Food and faith in one crusty round. You mark each one. A short vertical, then a horizontal, gentle but clear. The apprentice tries next. His cross is crooked. Looks more like a startled butterfly. You nod. Closer, he beams. The fire hums. You open the oven, check the heat with the back of your hand. Just right. You load the loaves in one by one, spacing them like chess pieces. The scent begins almost immediately. The church bell tolls. You've got until the final ring to finish loading. Not a rule, just a rhythm. You close the oven, then finally you breathe. Baking for the parish has always been different. You don't get paid in coin, sometimes not even in trade. But there's something about it, offering nourishment to people who spend their days praying, burying, marrying, listening, that feels right. Necessary. A fringe detail you once heard from an old monk: some villages believed that bread baked for the parish should only be touched by men who hadn't spoken in an hour. Silent bread born of quiet minds. You tried that once. Your apprentice lasted 7 minutes. As the loaves bake, you sit. Not because you're done, because you must rest. Your hands twitch. Your back pulses. Your thighs feel like someone beat them with a baguette. But inside you, beneath the fatigue, is a small glowing thing. A warmth. A pride. You've done good work today. You watch the loaves rise. You can't help it. You know they will. You know the exact point, when the top will stretch, when the slash will widen into a soft smile, when the crust will begin to color. But still you watch. The apprentice sits beside you. He doesn't say anything, not out of reverence. He's asleep. Head tilted, arms dusted in flour, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You don't wake him. You rest your eyes too, just for a moment. The bakery hums, then knock, knock, knock. The priest's boy, 12 maybe, hair like hay. He peeks in. Father says he hopes the bread isn't burned again. You grunt. Tell him to confess his lies. The boy grins. He also says thank you, that you believe. You wrap the finished loaves in clean cloth. They smell like simplicity, like truth. You pack the basket and hand it off. The boy nearly buckles under the weight. Tell Father to chew slower this time. Tell him yourself. You snort, too busy blessing the oven. He runs off. You sit again. The apprentice stirs, wipes drool from his chin, and blinks. Did I miss anything? Just salvation. He blinks. Like actual salvation, you shrug. Depends who's eating. The oven is quiet now, spent, the fire low. You open the mouth and rake out the ash. It falls into a bucket with a soft hiss. Here's something odd. You keep the ash, always. You store it in a small sack in the corner. Mix it into soap sometimes. Spread it on the garden. Some say it keeps pests away. Others say it brings good luck. Historians debate whether this was practical or magical. You say, why not both? You close the oven door, gently, with respect. The fire's done for the day. You sweep the floor, wipe the bench, store the blade, fold the cloth. You hum as you do it. Not a song, just a thread of sound, low and steady, something old. Maybe your master hummed it. Maybe it came from the oven itself. The apprentice hums along a little off key. You don't correct him. There's bread cooling on the rack. There's ash in the bucket. There's silence in your bones. And there's just enough dough left to begin again. The final stretch isn't loud. It doesn't burst through the door like a rush of customers or end with some fanfare. It fades. You lean against the flour sack, fingers sore, feet tingling. The apprentice is sweeping again, for the 4th time today. He hums without realizing, off tune but consistent. The broom thumps in rhythm with your heartbeat. The bakery is warm, not hot. Just warm enough to lull you into thinking you might sit a moment too long and accidentally melt into the bench. The last loaves are cooling, the last crumbs brushed. The ledger's been closed. The oven rests like an old dog mouth shut, belly cold. You glance out the window. The sun has barely finished rising for most people. And yet, your day is done. Or close enough. You crack your knuckles, regret it immediately. Your shoulders ache with that deep, bone-familiar tiredness that only bread brings. That slow, heavy exhale of a job fully, utterly done. The apprentice plops down beside you, covered in flour, hair like a sheep that lost a fight with a windmill. He grins. I didn't ruin anything today. You raise an eyebrow. Define ruin. He pauses. I didn't set anything on fire. Better. You reach behind the bench and pull out 2 small rolls. The first batch. Golden, firm, humble. You hand him one. He holds it like it's a medal. You both bite in. Still warm, still chewy, still real. Silence settles. Here's your last quirky bit of Renaissance trivia. In some towns, bakers weren't allowed to eat their own bread before customers did. Superstition, maybe. But some believed it brought bad luck to taste what you'd made before anyone else had the chance to. You never followed that rule. Bread doesn't just feed others. It feeds you. The apprentice finishes his roll in 2 bites, wipes his hands, and leans back. I think I want to do this forever. You don't answer. Not right away, because it's hard to explain that wanting to bake and choosing to keep baking day after day, burn after burn, loaf after loaf, aren't always the same. But maybe, just maybe, he'll learn. He yawns. Can I sleep now? You wave vaguely. If you can find a corner without flour in it. He curls up under the counter, asleep in seconds. You look around your shop. Empty racks, clean bench, settled air. The bakery breathes with you. Tomorrow it all begins again, before the bells, before the light, before the first rooster bothers to wake. You'll mix and knead and wait and watch. You'll burn your hand and split a loaf and bless the oven and glare at the flour and whisper to the dough like it's the last living thing on earth. And people will never see it. They'll walk in hand over a coin and bite into something that took hours of patience, intuition, and aching labor. They'll say, good bread, and never think twice. But that's fine. You'll know. You'll remember every tiny crackle, every loaf that rose just right, every time the mother dough danced to life like an old friend saying, still here. You'll remember that your bread helped someone, even if just for a moment. A tired woman feeding her children, an old man eating in silence with his memories, a boy licking crumbs from his hands in an alley. You fed them, and that's enough. That's more than enough. The fire's gone out now, not with a hiss, but with a whisper. The bakery rests. The apprentice snores gently beneath the counter. The air has stilled thick with flour dust and dreams. You've done your part. The dough has risen. The loaves have cooled. The town has been fed. Your body sinks into the bench, every joint letting go. Your palms raw from kneading rest quietly in your lap. The heat in your chest is no longer from the oven, but from something slower, softer. A kind of quiet pride. Outside, the city moves on. Boots scuff cobblestones. Vendors call out in the square. Life spins forward. But here in this little corner of warmth and ash, time slows. You close your eyes, and maybe just for a moment, you see it all again. The rising steam from a split crust. The flicker of firelight across a fresh batch. The look on a child's face as you hand them a still warm roll. The sacred, simple truth that you've taken flour water and air and made something worth waking up for. The fire may be out, but the warmth remains. So now let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let your thoughts rise and fall, like dough left in peace. You did good today. Rest now. Let the world keep spinning. The bakery will be here when you wake. Sweet dreams.